Let's have a look at fractions and what they really mean. Let's take a fraction like, say, 3/4 and think about what it looks like. 3/4 means 3 out of 4. This line you can think of as meaning out of, also divided by. Now, 3 out of 4 means if we cut something, say a pizza, into 4 equal-sized parts, and we shade in 3 of them, we have 3 out of the 4 parts shaded. So when you say 3/4, people often think of a picture like this, which is really helpful to understand what 3/4 really means. But there's other ways to think of 3/4. You can also think of it as 3 divided by 4. So an equally valid but different picture might be to have a picture of 3 pizzas and 4 hungry people wanting to eat it, and a question that asked you, how much pizza will they get each? Well, there are 3 pizzas and we're dividing it up amongst 4 people. 3 divided by 4 is actually really the answer to that question. They'll each get 3/4 of a pizza. This is not a picture you probably think of when you think of 3/4, but it is equally true and valid. Think of the 4 hungry people eating this pizza. They'll get a quarter each. Then they'll tackle this pizza and have a quarter each. Then they'll tackle this pizza and have a quarter each. So each of the people will get 3/4. Now, to understand fractions fully, we need to be able to imagine them not just as areas like this, but also be able to place them on the number line. So a number like 3/4, it has a visual representation, but it's also just a number. So if I start a number line here, which goes on forever in both directions, let's start from 0 and make 1 and 2. Actually, let's make that a little bit further along. Then as we go to place quarters on the number line, a lot of people get a little bit confused about whether to make 4 tick marks here between the 0 and the 1 because we're dividing by 4, or whether to make 4 spaces. Well, the answer is you want to make 4 spaces because the space between 0 and 1, this is the whole space. So if you want to divide up the whole space, you need to make 4 spaces. But then when you go to actually label them, you need to label the tick marks, not the spaces. Let me show you. To divide between 0 and 1, it's easiest to first divide it in half. Okay, exactly halfway between the two. And after that, we want to divide halves in half. And if we have half of a half, just like in the picture here, we can divide in half and then we can divide in half again. And half of a half is a quarter. So we have a quarter, half, which is the same as 2/4, isn't it? And then if we divide the next space in half again, we'll have made some more quarters. So now we have 3/4 and 1, which is also called 4/4. If you've got 4/4, you've got 1 whole pizza. We can keep on going here and divide up the space between 1 and 2, put it in half and then in half again, and count by quarters. We've got 4/4, 5/4, 6/4, 7/4, and 8/4. Obviously, if you've got 8/4, that's 8 divided by 4. That's the same as 2. Some of these spots actually have other names too. If this is 1/2, then 1 is 2 halves. And 6/4, well, here's 1/2, another half, and another half. This is 3 halves, isn't it? We can also change between improper fractions, ones like this that have a bigger number on the top than the bottom, and we can call that not 5/4, but 1 1/4. Because if we're here on 1 and then we add just 1 more quarter, we must have gone to 1 1/4. So we have 1 1/4, 1 2/4, or 1 1/2. 7/4 would be, well, we've got 1 1/4, 1 2/4. This would be 1 3/4. So you can have lots of names for the same thing. Now, when you know how to put these on a number line and just count by quarters, just like on a normal number line, you'd say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, if you're counting by quarters, 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4, 5/4, 6/4, 7/4, you just count by quarters. Okay. Now, if you have trouble working out that, say, 7/4 is the same as 1 3/4, and you get a little bit confused by this on the number line, don't forget you can always draw up what 7/4 looks like. Think if I've got a pizza and I cut it into 4 pieces, that's 4/4 right there. And if I've got 7/4, I must have 3 more quarters from another pizza. Then if you're thinking, what's that the same as a mixed numeral? We'll just count up how many pizzas you've got. You've got 1 whole pizza and you've got an extra 3/4 of a pizza. So being able to go between the pictures as areas and the number line representation will really help your understanding.